Hello people, I am Jaby KOAY, joined by ACHARA KIRK.
Hello.
We're discussing Sui Dhaaga, made in India, the film starring Anushka Sharma, Varun, Dhawan, Raghuveer Yadav, and it's written and directed by Sharat Kataria. This is from IMDb, a heartwarming story of pride and self-reliance rooted in the heart of India. I want to say right off the bat that I seem to be disagreeing with a lot of the reviews that are out there. I did a quick Google search, I looked on Rotten Tomatoes, and it seems like most people were giving this 3 out of 5, 3.5 out of 5 on average. Some give it 4. Me personally, I'm giving it 5 out of 5 Jaby heads. Yeah. I loved this movie. I came out feeling great. I really appreciated what they did on all fronts. Acting, directing, story-wise, music-wise, the comedy. Man, the comedy is like, I got like 60 to 70% of the comedy, because people were laughing at stuff I didn't laugh at, only because I didn't get it, but what I did got, I really liked. I really appreciated this movie.
I really enjoyed it as well. I echo a lot of your sentiments, but I would give it a 4 out of 5. And my reasoning for this is not even something that I can very definitely put my finger on. I think it's just that it reminds me a lot of Padman, but where Padman really hit me very emotionally. I did get emotionally charged from watching this, but it wasn't as strong. Okay. So for that reason alone, I would give it a 4 out of 5 rather than a 5.
I'll give you that. It didn't well me up as much as I wanted it to. I didn't cry as much as I wanted it to. It did move me, and I did have little like wetness in my eyes, but I wasn't crying as much as like when I watched Secret Superstar. I don't remember exactly how I felt when I watched Padman. I do remember it moving me.
Yeah.
This film got me though, and I think one of the reasons it got me so strong was because the structure for me was something I could identify with. I think it's got a lot of Western appeal accidentally, because it has what I call the John McClane effect. I've talked about this before. This main character goes through a lot of setbacks over the course of trying to achieve this bigger thing. Much like that film with Will Smith where he's trying to sell these machines and he ends up...
The Pursuit of Happiness?
Yeah, it's exactly like that, right? He's just trying to achieve this thing for his family, and it's like right up to the very end, it's like these constant setbacks.
Yeah.
And I don't want to tell you what happens at the end, though I think the ending is obvious, even right from the trailer. Like, you can kind of guess what's going to happen.
It's a feel-good story. I think we all know, like, it's going to be positive, right?
But that being said, like, I feel like it did a good job of, like, keeping you kind of in there of, he's not quite won yet. He hasn't won yet. He's got little victories, but he hasn't quite gotten there yet. Even after the intermission, it didn't feel like a completely different film. It felt like it continued the same story, and it was continuing that struggle to get somewhere, just to have this little piece of earth for himself so he could call it his own kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So one of your remarks was, he just wants a little tailoring business. That's all he wants. Not a big deal.
I mean, he wants to have dignity overall, because like we can see this from the trailer. He's not treated well in his former job. He's ridiculed, and he doesn't realize it, but it takes his wife seeing it and kind of giving him perspective and being like, hey, that's not cool. It is not okay for people to treat you like you're less than a human being. And that starts his whole journey.
Okay, that's another thing. That's a good thing you brought that up. So his wife is a very active character in this film.
Yeah.
She is very active in terms of what happens in the plot, in terms of trying to get things done on her end, in terms of her assistance in this whole pursuit. If it weren't for her, he wouldn't have seen the other thing that he could be. She literally makes him a better version of him. And so that relationship I fell in love with. Even though, like, I saw one critic who was like, the romance isn't really clear. I'm like, I bought into it. I liked what they had together on screen. I'm not sure what that critic was complaining about. Like, I like that kind of very innocent, restricted love that they were trying to kind of have together. At one point, she's like, this is the first dinner we've had together by ourselves. Like, it was very innocent and simple, and I really appreciated that. One of the things I liked was when he was there was a wedding scene. If you guys haven't seen it yet, there's a wedding scene near the beginning where this character, who is also from one of the web series I've watched. I forgot which web series it is. I think Baked, I think, is the web series. Or it's not Baked. It's a different web series. I apologize, I forgot the name of it. But he is talking to the main character, Varun Dhawan. He's telling him, look at this trick he can do. And he turns him into like a human dog. Yeah. Making him do these dog behaviors, right? And it was really uncomfortable to watch. Like, so unsettling. Like, I was just cringing in my seat, like, this is so horrible. And his wife felt the same way. Like, her expressions were like, are you fucking kidding? Like, how can you do this? And like, she lost her dignity in that moment. And he's like, what's your problem? It's not you, it's me. She's like, whatever happens to you, it's us.
Yeah, it happens to me.
And I really like that response. So the wife's philosophy from a writing standpoint, I just really liked her philosophy, her outlook, and everything she was trying to do in the story. I just liked his adventure in the story. I liked seeing like all the challenges they overcame in an effort just to make this work. And everyone else like around them who was trying to just tear them down and being like, it's not gonna work for this, like negative Nancy's left and right. And these people who were trying to take from them too, like one person was lending them the sewing kit and then took it back and wanted like 40% of all his sales. There was fights that were shot in a very interesting way. Like, because they weren't like professional martial arts scraps. They looked like real fights between common folk. Yeah. And the shots lingered for a while. It wasn't chopped up with crazy angles. It was like, it just lingered as these scraps were happening and the guy gets thrown out of the shop. And I'm like, I love these long takes because it makes it feel like you're really there and it's really uncomfortable. And you're like, oh gosh, what's gonna happen? It just feels real. I'm speaking as someone who's American, who doesn't speak Hindi. So maybe there is stuff I'm not getting. Maybe there is a limitation to my ability to fully understand, both for the good and for the bad, the nuances of the film. But from my limited perspective, I thoroughly enjoyed the heck out of this movie. It moved me. It moved me in a very strong way. And I'd say like the first 10 minutes were a little bit like, let's get the story going.
It's a lot of exposition.
Yeah, but after that, I'm like, I'm with it. Like, the more the movie went on, the more I enjoyed where it was going. And I was rooting for this guy and his wife the whole way through.
Yeah. Speaking of adventure, though, the one thing that really stuck out to me as I was watching it was, like, you don't need to have, like, an epic story in order for it to be an epic story. Let me see if I can try and explain this better. It's a very simple story.
Simple objective.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a simple story with a simple objective, which is just a very ordinary guy who's trying to better his situation, and he goes on this big adventure, and it's even like a physical adventure because he travels to a different place and he's doing all these things, and it turns into a very epic story with very simple roots. Yeah. And I really, really appreciate that.
I'm gonna go into minor spoilers right now, so if you haven't watched the movie yet, I would strongly urge you to watch it and then come back to this part of the review. Just as a heads up, like, not all the reviewers out there are in agreement with me. It seems like the consensus is 3 out of 5, 3.5 out of 5. Achara's giving it 4, I'm giving it 5. So just know that walking into it, I adored this movie, the heck out of it. But you may feel different. Your mileage may vary. So, spoilers coming right now. At one point, they're at that factory, the sewing factory, right? And I thought that was a profound part of the movie for a number of reasons. Number one, in real life, you deal with people trying to take advantage of you all the time. People will always try to take advantage of you if they can. And it's one of the worst things about human beings is that they will try to take advantage of you. And I love that the film took a long time to really emphasize that. Like, here you've got this guy with amazing talent and he's just slaving away in this place, and his idea was stolen and for the advantage of this company. Yeah. When he could have gone and done that himself. And it's like, man, that really sucks. From a business standpoint, like, sometimes you don't recognize your own worth, and it's important to recognize your own worth, your own value. That's a lesson I struggled with for a long time, and sometimes I still struggle with it. Like, knowing what your value is. Sometimes you feel bad asking for X amount of dollars or X amount of rupees, whatever the case may be, for your services. And it's like, but you deserve it if you've got the skill. And sometimes you just feel bad about asking, even though you know in your heart you deserve it, you feel bad about asking for that much money. You know, I've gone through that personally. Like, I've had to deal with that a lot. And so that's one aspect, right? And then the other aspect was he comes back to Anushka Sharma and goes, you know, when we were struggling and had barely 2 pennies to rub together, like, we had more freedom and like it felt better. Like, and I know what he's talking about. Like, when I worked in casting and I was actually doing pretty well, like, at the same time, I'm like, dang, like, but I'm kind of miserable.
Yeah, you know? It can be a cage.
Yes. Yeah. And so him recognizing that cage was great, and that also represented his arc, part of his arc in the story. Because initially he started out as someone who's very subservient to the man, and then now he's realizing he doesn't have to be, and he felt so much happier when he was like fighting for a piece of his own thing. I want to like reference that scene when they were riding that bike all the way out to the to get the sewing machine. Like when I saw that in the trailer, I thought that scene is gonna mess me up. It didn't mess me up quite as much as I wanted it to. It didn't make me like cry, like Secret Superstar cry, right? That's my bar for how much I want to cry in a movie. And even though it didn't do that, like story-wise, it was still profound because like they're riding this bike like 40 kilometers or something like that.
Yeah.
He messes up his foot after they fall over. He's still going even with a messed up foot. And then like he's trying to get bandaged while she's waiting in line. Invariably, she gets called in while he's trying to get fixed. And he's waiting in this equally long line just to get some bandages. He has to like literally fight his way to get some bandages, which in the film is telling you how much we do not allow a person to have dignity sometimes.
Yeah.
Like for our fellow man, we just kind of like don't give a shit because there's so many people and whatever, and it's like we're all just trying to shove our way forward in life. I like that the film is really emphasizing how little concern we have for our fellow man sometimes. There's a lot of layers of philosophy if you really dig in here.
Yeah, and I mean, that thing you were talking about with the garment factory, they were taking something that he was selling to people basically at cost for 500 rupees or whatever, and they were trying to sell it for 2,000, and it's like anytime a corporation gets involved, they just want to turn a profit at the expense of people who are poor and struggling.
Yes.
And like that really got to me when he was like, these people are poor and you're trying to take advantage of them.
Yeah.
Like, just stop.
Well, okay. That's a crazy gray area. So firstly, businesses are always marking up the value of their thing.
Right.
That's just business. You go to a bar in LA, whiskey that costs you maybe $5, a $20 bottle of whiskey, they'll charge you $10 for a shot of it.
Yeah, I know.
Markup is just part of business practice. But what is worth discussing is how these hospitals and stuff and the government, it's not working hand in hand to take care of their poor.
Yeah.
To take care of the needy. It's like, it is literally set to work against people. Like the system is rigged to work against people in a very messed up way. Like at one point the father's like, I have 250,000 rupees in my savings. And her surgery, all things told, was like 150,000 rupees.
Yeah.
It was like insane. And she had this like stint or something for her angioplasty that was from outside of it was imported.
Yeah.
It reminded me of the things I watched my family go through, and it's like my dad had a heart attack and he had to have an angioplasty and all that stuff, and I watched him deal with the system and whatnot and how expensive it gets. Like the only reason like he got the treatment as good as he did was because my mom happened to work at a good place that had good health benefits, and had she not, like who knows what would have happened to him. Oh my god, that sniveling like brother-in-law character or whatever he was.
He was like the brother of the sister-in-law.
Yeah. He was like perfectly crafted as this guy you just hate. Like you loved to hate him because everything he did, it made you hate him more.
It was infuriating every time he tickled him.
Yeah.
He was like,
now
stop.
He was borderline caricature, but he was still effectively written in such a way that I hated him. I just wanted to like crush him because he made me so angry with from the moment he shows up, you're like, something's off with this guy.
Yeah.
Something is just off with this guy, and it doesn't feel right. And you feel it as the audience, and you see it unfold over the course of the story, how it gets progressively worse. And this dude is not looking out for fam. He's looking out for number one. Whatever that end means, it's not really clear, but clearly he's just looking out for himself. All fronts. I like this a lot between the acting. Sometimes the acting I question a little bit on Varun Dhawan's part. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. So this was like a new kind of role for him. I thought for the most part, he did pretty good. Anushka Sharma stole the show though, for me.
Oh god,
like,
yeah.
She just, I'm used to seeing her in a different kind of role, and I just bought her as this kind of down-to-earth, like simple woman.
The interesting thing about her character as well was that while she was very gentle, soft-spoken, and naive, she went on her own little journey as well. One of my favorite scenes in the movie was when she went back to the factory and basically stood up to the lady.
And to watch that vindictive bitch
Oh
just
my
tell her
God.
to wait outside all day long and not get the machine. But that was an act of her being an active character.
Yeah, she left home by herself without any accompaniment for the first time in her life, took a bus, went there and was like, I want the sewing machine back. And she was basically like, I'm a naive person, but I'm glad that I met you because now I know how the world works.
Right.
You know, and that was an important lesson. And it was done so gracefully.
Right.
Like, I really rate Anushka Sharma as an actress, but most of the time when we've seen her, she's always been more of like a feisty character.
Right.
So it was interesting to see her in a role where she
more
was
restrained.
very different,
Yeah.
and like not urban.
Right.
And I think I remarked on that when I watched the trailer. I was like, it's interesting to see her in this kind of more provincial role.
Right. The acting was very understated for the most part, in my opinion. I thought it was very well performed. Shoot, what was I going to say? The music. I wanted to comment on the music real quick before I forget. One of the things I really liked about the music in this film is that it felt integrated in a very smart way.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like it was coming out of left field and it's just like really uproarious. Like, okay, my reference is always, is it Kala with Hrithik Roshan? Is that the name of the film? Where he's blind and he's like, we all thought it was
No.
Daredevil, but it's not Daredevil. Kabbalah or something like that. It starts with a K, I believe. And Hrithik Roshan is this blind guy who's fighting on behalf of it. He's avenging his dead wife.
Right.
Whatever that film is. You guys can tell me in the comments. But in the film, when he discovers his wife is dead, the music just goes into super dramatic. And I was like, that was one of the first things I noticed, and it kind of turned me off. Here, it felt like the music came in the perfect way, like the perfect gradient.
Yeah.
And I liked the music editing, I guess is the way to put it. I also liked just the soundtrack. Like I said earlier,
was really good.
like it had nice rhythm to it. It was nicely composed.
The
and them
lyrics
singing.
were really nice as well. They were very.
We're looking at translated lyrics.
Well, yeah, but like they went with the story
Yes.
really well, I thought. So,
and it was sung nice. Like I liked the soundtrack of the film quite a lot. We haven't talked about the father, Maji's father, Raghuveer Yadav. He was really funny. He was a standout character.
Yes.
And there were these great moments in the film. Two great moments in particular where, okay, so you have Maji, or Varun Dhawan, he's got this whole thing going on with this assembly line for the clothes, right? And the father's like, hey, and he just walks off like this little curmudgeon. He's got nothing, he's having no part of this, right? And then at one point he sees that they're struggling to get this machine working. He's like, well, if you're gonna do it. And he comes over and he like fixes it and then he leaves again with the same attitude. And I was like, it was so perfect because it's like he was remaining like with his heels dug into the ground about how much he's opposed to this. But he's like, well, if you're gonna do this, this is how you do it. And then he walks away.
Yeah.
I really like that moment. And then at the end, what I wanted from the end of Dangal, forgive me for bringing that movie up and using it in a sort of negative way. What I wanted from the ending of Dangal, I got here.
Right.
And that is, it didn't matter that Maji didn't win. It mattered that Maji went the distance.
Yeah.
That's ultimately what mattered. And I wanted that from the ending of Dangal, and I didn't get it. And that's one of the things that upset me. And people argued that it's based on a true story, so that's why. And I'm like, well, screw true stories. You can take artistic licensing to make it better. But anyway, so what I got here was the father turns at one point, he goes, I don't care that we lost. I want to keep going with this business. And I got like really choked up. I'm like, he wants to keep going with the business. He's like, you made me someone like you. He basically made him reborn. He brought life back into him.
Because he was like, I've never been the type of person that anyone kind of looked at basically with respect. And for that time that they were at that competition, he was like, oh, wow, this is what it tastes like.
Yes.
And his son made him feel like important.
Yeah.
And so he's like, yeah, I'm going to support you. And even if that means I have to work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, wow.
It was very moving. It touched me in a very profound way. Now, after that, it got a little bit like predictable. I knew what was gonna happen. It's like, oh, something's calling me back. My phone died. I better go see what happens. I'm like, I wonder, movie. I wonder what's gonna happen when that character goes back there. I wonder what's gonna happen when that character goes back into the room and then like I bet like he won. I bet like it was just a misdirect when they told him he didn't win. And that's what it turns out it was. It still was like, hey, you fuck it. Like I still appreciated it. Like you got me that far. It's fine. You could literally do whatever you want at that point. I was happy. And it was cute with the credits afterwards, explaining, the epilogue essentially in the credits.
Yeah.
It went a little fast for me because, I don't speak the language, but I still, what I was able to get, I liked. So.
No, I mean, I think it's a really cool story. And it's cool that these types of stories are coming out of India. And it makes me think like, wow, there must be so many entrepreneurs in India that like this is like a story that keeps being retold. You've got Padman, you've got Sui Dhaaga, and they're saying like, look at what we can do, made in India. Like we should be proud of our craftsmanship, our heritage, the talent that is prevalent in this country. And I think like that's a really great source of pride.
Yeah.
And like, yay.
It's funny you should say that because the name, like the commercial, it made me think it was gonna be kind of different. Like, cause it says the name is called Made in India, right? I thought there was gonna be a lot more emphasis placed on that, like the pride of being Indian and having something made in the country.
Right.
I thought that was gonna be a lot stronger of a focal point in the film, and it so was not. I didn't mind. I'm actually glad that it was one of the few times that I was misdirected in a way that I appreciate. I thought it was more about patriotism and national pride, and it kind of was, but it was more so about this couple's journey.
Yeah.
And I really liked that. I mean, it had so much heart.
And it's a source of inspiration, I think, as well. If you feel like maybe you want to do something like that, I think it's a very inspirational story to be like, yeah, well, you know, with perseverance and bravado and support from your loved ones and your community, you can make things happen. And I think it was really great that at the end, they gave back to the community and helped more people to become self-reliant and have their own businesses. It's fantastic.
One thing I was kind of jealous about is that we don't get these stories that often in America. No. Like, we don't get these movies that often. Like, one of the last times we got this was October Sky. Maybe Creed, but Creed is like a sequel to Rocky, one of the like most famous iterations of a story like this about the underdog who comes out on top despite, you know, everything working against him, going the distance. You know, that's what October Sky is about. And October Sky is one of my favorite films. Before Whiplash, October Sky was my favorite movie. And if you guys haven't watched it, I strongly recommend it because it's a similar kind of feeling. It's not the same story at all, but it's a similar thing of a kid just trying to go the distance and achieve this dream that he has. And I wish we got more stories like this. Because it's just like a genuine human story.
Yeah.
You know? So anyway, I really like this. And Anushka Sharma, like, again, Varun Dhawan did a great job. But Anushka Sharma just like really, like, I don't know. I can't emphasize, both of their performances were great. I just really, really was drawn to her. I don't know why. Like, there was just something. I think it's also the writing because her character was so awesome. Like, that's, you see, okay, like for instance, you see Priyanka Chopra in a film, you're like, oh my God, it'd be so awesome to have a wife like that, right? Yeah. But like, I see this character, I'm like, that would be awesome to have a wife like that, who just like, who picks at you in the way that makes you wake up and go, I could be a better version of myself, and inspires you to go that distance. So I like her character. I like how she stood by him and she fought for him and she made moves to try to help. It didn't quite work out, but like she tried and she was there to the end. Like that was a very awesome like representation of what a marriage going through hard times looks like and what the possibilities are for them coming out on top. Anyway, I'm done. Okay, so you guys, thanks so much for hanging out. Hopefully you enjoyed the film as much as I did, or if not, like, 60-70% of the way I did. I was very, very happy with this movie, and I would recommend it to all my friends. So let us know your thoughts on this film and our thoughts in the comments below. Be honest, be verbose, and check out ACHARA KIRK. She's on the social media. Subscribe if you haven't already. Check out our other reactions, reviews, and short films. I am Jaby KOAY. This is
ACHARA KIRK.
Peace out.